Hello, I'm Betty Swann, and welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you will get help for the tough decisions in your life. Tonight, I have a great guest. She's a recording artist who has toured the country and opened for Rihanna, and she's a worship leader. Her name is Jeannie Ortega. Jeannie, welcome. I can't wait to hear all about your life. You have already had a very exciting, thrilling, monumental. How did all this happen? Tell me about your background first, and then let's find out how everything happened out of that.
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Now the neighborhood is much better. But,
really? What neighborhood is it?
Bushwick, Brooklyn.
Okay.
But when I was growing up there, it definitely wasn't a neighborhood where you wanted to raise your family. But, that's where we grew up from even my mom's family, from as far as we could all remember. And it was tough, growing up in a hood in New York is not easy. And
was it a specific nationality, ethnic group?
I think there's mostly Latinos, blacks. Now the neighborhood is changing as gentrification
I'd like to hear
has
about.
come in. Now there's a Starbucks. But it was just mostly that, and there's always kind of been diversity, but it definitely wasn't a neighborhood that was just good. It had a lot of drugs and violence, and and I grew up in a fiery Latin home, so it was just a lot of that. And from as young as I could remember, I felt like I wanted peace, and I wanted to run away and get out of the world that I was in. And so even at the tender age of 7 years old, I somehow knew what suicide was. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I thought I should just do that. Maybe the world around me would be better. When you're young and you don't want your family to fight, and you don't want, and you want everyone outside to love you, so you want your friends to love you. You want your friends to, your family to live that Disney World fairy tale. And it's not. It's real life. So just having that false perception of what life should have been because of what you see on TV and stuff like that, I figure if I wasn't in this life, then maybe it would be better. And obviously it was demonic. I don't know how a little kid
could even think that way. Mm-hmm. But they do.
Yeah, yes, very often actually, and that's why I even talk about it, because I know how often it is.
And somebody watching this right now might be a child that young.
Wow. And
they're really listening to you.
Mm. So the way, the Lord used music to rescue me out of that way of thinking. I was very young, and I was listening to a Mariah Carey cassette tape, because that's when they were around. And I don't even know what she was saying, but there was an emotion behind a song that I heard, and it just helped me cry. And just the pain and the sorrow, the despair that I felt inside as such a young child, it just came out as I listened to this song,
And were you like 7 years old?
I was 7 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And after that, though, I said, that's amazing. Music has power to help you feel better. And I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be a singer, because music has power. Mm-hmm. And, he didn't know it at the time, but in my head I was thinking, it had the power to save my life right then. I want to help
He didn't know about that.
No, he didn't. And, not till now that I'm a lot older that I even talk about it, my internal struggles. I think a lot of people don't even talk about that. But it's so important to actually tell somebody when you're feeling that way, because, that's why we have each other, so we can talk and let it out in that way. But the Lord He used music for me, since I wasn't brave enough to talk about it at the time. And I said, I want to do that. So he said, well, you better learn how to write then if you want to be a singer. And that's kind of where it all began for me. That opened up a whole other world of hope. Now I had hope. I had something to live towards. It wasn't just pain or hurt that I felt either in the home or when I was out in school or in the neighborhood where I was, really picked on and ridiculed, I looked different. I didn't look like the people that I grew up with.
How did you look different?
Well, I had color eyes, number one, and
Instead of dark eyes.
Yeah, and even in my family, my brothers and sisters are always like, "How did you get the color eyes?" Yeah, they were just like, "I got my grandma's eyes." So just with that alone, I would get picked on, I'd get ridiculed, the girls would hate me because the boys would like me, and I always wanted to belong, I always wanted to be loved, and I didn't get any of that from outside validation from friends or anything, so music was it for me, and I escaped into that.
So when did you actually start singing?
So I started singing right then. I got involved in the school choir, and I would even go door to door in my neighborhood with my karaoke machine, and I would sing for my neighbors. I'd say, "Hey, can I sing a song for you?" I'd be singing Whitney Houston, all the big ones, Celine
Who did
Dion,
you like
Mariah
the best?
Carey. Mariah Carey, because of the impact that song made on me. I took a liking to her because I was like, wow, that was powerful. But I loved them all, Celine Dion, Mariah, Whitney Houston. They were my favorites. So I would just emulate what they did, and I'd sing for my neighbors. Just anywhere that I could, I did. And it was amazing, and then growing up, I even came across the little snakes, the con artists who were like, "Hey, I'd be your manager." And they were really just trying to milk, my parents for some money if we were gullible enough to do it. And we did because we didn't know any better. And then my story is really crazy. I was sitting in a New York cab one day, grocery shopping with my mom, and I started to sing along to the radio. And the cab driver pulls up to our house, and he's just like, "You're so beautiful." I was probably about 11 at this time now. He's like, "You're so beautiful, and you have maybe a little older, but and you have a great voice. Like, do you have a CD or a demo or something?" He said, "I'm also a limo driver, and I drive around famous managers. Maybe I can give your tape to someone."
Really?
Yeah. And I said, "Yeah, I do." At this point, I had my karaoke recordings, and then even with the con artists that I worked with, I had did some recordings. And I ran upstairs. We took the groceries up. I said, "Just wait, I'll bring my cassette tape down to you," and I left it with him. And a couple of weeks later, a manager in the pop music industry reached out to me, and she said, she met with my parents. She called us in, and she said, "I don't know why I called you in, but my limo driver gave me your cassette, and there was just something, and I needed to meet you." And that's how it began.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and she was the real deal, and that's how I got into the music industry, the pop music industry. I started to work with some of the biggest names from as early as the age of 13.
Can you tell those names, or rather, you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't, because my experiences weren't so hot. They're some of the biggest names now, and I grew up just. I think in the environment, it was horrible for a child. The things that people are subjected to sometimes in the entertainment industry. If you don't know what's going on, you can really be taken advantage of. And I thank God, because although I didn't have a relationship with him, I did know he existed. My dad always would tell me, "You have to say your prayers," and my mom was always praying for me, and we grew up like that, but not relationship-wise with God at all. It was definitely just a religious practice that would, come and go, Easter, Christmas, but nothing really real.
A lot of people have that.
Yes, a lot of people do, but even in the midst of that, not really having relationship with God, I can look back and see his hand was always there protecting me, because I was exposed to a lot of things, drugs and just promiscuity, and I was encouraged to be very promiscuous. And,
even at an early age.
oh, yes. I was 13 to 16 in this. So in all of these formative years, when I was going to school and then going to the studio after school, these producers, and that's why I don't say their names.
That's okay.
Just,
That's fine, sure.
The Lord knows, and hopefully there'll be conviction there, and they'll come to know him. But I was exposed to all of it. I was told, you have to make the girls want to be you, and the guys want to be with you. And that was the frame of thinking. So throughout all these years, I said I wanted to do music to help people, but because I was being groomed a certain way, my ideas, even my heart, it started to change, because I said, well, I have to make the people want to have me. You know, the girls want to be me, the guys want to be with me. So I started to now mold myself to their what they were asking me to do. And I forgot that I wanted to do music to help people. But I got a record deal. I was signed to Hollywood, Disney. So Hollywood Records is a subdivision of Disney. And it was incredible. I mean, this girl from the hood, I get flown out to California. I started to tour the country. I eventually parted ways with those producers who were grooming me that way, and God was even fortunate in that He made another way, and I met some awesome musicians and producers, and I started to create my first album, which was called No Place Like Brooklyn, because you can take the girl out of the hood, but you couldn't take me, the hood out of me. So I wanted to always remember where I came from. And I did that, and I toured the record, and I had a top 25 Billboard hit. Billboard voted my album #1 on the Heat Seeker charts, and that's when they choose the albums that they think. And what was the name
of that album again?
There's No Place Like Brooklyn.
So people could still get that.
Yeah, they can. It wasn't a Christian album, but it was. You can definitely hear me. You can hear my heart in it. But I always had a voice, and that was important to me, to always speak my voice. And even you'll hear me talk about God in it. Although I had no relationship with Him, I just knew that He loved me. And I needed to know that, because life was hard. Growing up the way I did, and, just being a victim of so many different things at a tender age, I needed there to be a God.
Yes, and there was.
And there was, and He was always there, catching all my tears. And in the midst of all of that, that's when someone, really started to talk to me about the relationship with a Savior.
Really? Somebody in the industry or a friend?
No, I was still in high school.
Oh, my
so mind you, I'm doing all of this. I was going to school, and then right after school, all night, sometimes to the early morning, recording my record. And then there's times where I had to travel, and I went to a Brooklyn High School of the Arts. So I talked to my principal. I said, look, I'm recording a record. This is a dream come true. Can you please just cut me some slack? If I have some days that I have to miss. And the principal was really supportive, because it's an art school, and they understood, and even that was grace, So they allowed me to do that and still get my education and still graduate and everything. And I graduated with honors and all of that. But I was working like around the clock as a young girl.
Just like an adult would be.
Yeah. And
was that hard on you?
You know what? I was so ambitious. I had a goal, and I was encouraged. I had great encouragement in my life. So I just felt like, that was it, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me. I mean, I don't know if it was hard. There were times where I'm like, I'm hungry. I don't want to sing right now, and I probably should have stopped and eaten a little more.
But other than that, you loved all of it.
I loved it. I was ambitious, and I had a goal, and I just went for it. I hit the ground running,
Good. I understand that. I'm like that, so I understand.
And I had to, because I needed to be able to protect myself too when I was in the industry. And
absolutely. So how did you get this relationship with God?
Well, it was just a regular day in high school in the midst of me recording the album. So this is before the success even really. And God had been wooing me. He'd been wooing me. And I was, something had happened personally, and I was at the point where I felt again like I didn't want to be here. And here I am. Now
everything you ever wanted, and now you're feeling it.
And
how crazy is that?
I still felt it.
Yeah.
And I had no inner peace, and I didn't know what true unconditional love really was. I was around a bunch of people with moving parts, and I'm thinking, why don't they love me like better, or why, in the industry, like, you know, if I wasn't hot at the moment, then I was forgotten. You know, so those things happen and you start to look in and you're like, what's wrong with me? So you start to get depressed and you start to, you know, just really give in to the enemy's plan to destroy your life. And here I was again thinking, you know, I want to die. And I'm in that state of mind, just not good, pretty much numb for about 2 days. And a friend in school says, she comes up to me and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, you know, just really numb, like not even responsive. I'm just like, and she's like, do you need to go to church? And I looked at her like, how do you know that? You know, because although I was numb, deep inside, I kept saying, I need to go to church. I need to go to church. But I couldn't go to the church that I was going to at the time. It was a religious church, and it was really all about ritual. So there was no relationship, and even the leader of the church, I didn't think he was fond of me. So I felt like if I went there, then that wouldn't be good. I'd probably want to kill myself even more. So I kept saying it, but I knew that somehow inside that I needed to go to church. And this girl she comes up to me and says that. And I was like, yes, I do. I need to go to church. And she took me to this Christian church. And no one that looked like me was in that church. It was very charismatic. People are like praising God with their hands lifted, you know, crying, talking out loud to him. And I'm like, these people are nuts. That's what I thought. I had never experienced anything like that, but I was jealous. I said, I would love to be that free around other people and talk to God like that. And because at this point I was just crying in the shower and in my bedroom at night. No one knew the pain that I had inside, or the shame or the guilt or whatever it is that I felt. So to see these people so openly, you know, just talk to God in front of other people, I thought they were crazy, but I was jealous. So I sat there and I wasn't partaking. I didn't even understand what that type of Christianity was like. And then the pastor called me to the front, and I was like, oh gosh. So I walk up there, and there was a bunch of people, and I guess he was picking people out, and I come up, and he started to pray for people, and he just gently touched my shoulder and passed on. He didn't pray for me. But all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit just came upon me. And I mean, now I know it's the Holy Spirit. At the moment, I just felt this overwhelming feeling of emotion. And I dropped to my knees and I began to weep bitterly. And it was at that moment, it was as if the Lord was healing me of the pain that I had, had for all these years. And I didn't even know it was the Lord, but I knew it was God, but I didn't know it was the Spirit. I didn't know that I was having a spiritual experience. I just knew that God had did something. It was amazing. I have that. No one says anything. Someone probably rubbed my back, but, whatever. I went back to my seat and I sat there like, what just happened? And it was as I believe it might have been the first time I ever felt like I heard the voice of God. And he said, go back home and tell your mother and your brother what happened. And I get in the car now. I get a ride home from my friend who had invited me from school and some of the church family there. And I could not stop crying. And I just cried the whole way home. And I cried for at least 2 hours. They sat with me in the car in front of my house. And they prayed for me. And then I went upstairs and I told my mom. And it was amazing. But I had a career. I had success. I was building an empire. So at this point, I just said, wow, that was amazing. I had an incredible experience with God, but I have to get back to work. So God, just come on me now on this journey, So I'm over here trying to bring God along for my journey. And, here I am. And then, like you said, I was opening up for Rihanna. I was her sole opening act. And we toured for a couple of months. And I toured with a bunch of other artists, big name artists, but she's probably the biggest one. And every show, I'm telling the audience, I'm like, put God first. Because now I knew that God was really real because I had an experience. But I was still half dressed. I was still dancing provocatively. I was still pretty much leading people on a negative path. And it wasn't until that same red carpet that I enjoyed walking on so long, it wasn't until that was pulled from under me and I lost my record deal, and you know, and I lost my entourage. And even at the time, my family had a split for the first time ever. My family broke up, and all these things happened that I said, wait a minute, God, do you want me to do something? Is there something that you have for me? And that's when I really took my relationship serious with God. And, you know, he allowed me.
And still it was music again, wasn't it?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, actually what happened after because I know as the Lord stripped me of all the idols. I had so many idols, you know. Now I was famous. Now, you know, I had built this empire, and I felt like it was my effort, and I felt, you know, it was just a very selfish thing. It wasn't, you know, yeah, I said put God first, but I wasn't really giving him the glory for it. I was pursuing fame. But it wasn't until he stripped me of all that I acknowledged him. But even when I did, and when I said, you know what, Lord, I realize now you have a plan for me. And that's why you allowed these things to happen. And I started going to that church faithfully. Yes, I was in the club still like 7 in the morning, but I'd wake up at 9 to go to church on Sunday because I knew God was real. But I hadn't started going through the sanctification process. You know, I wasn't allowing the Spirit of God to live in me. I was just, you know, he was visiting me, and I would embrace it, but then I would kick him out as soon as I was back out on the street because, you know, yes, I was in a relationship where we were doing things the ungodly way, and then, you know, I'm in the clubs and I'm doing all this, and I'm just around this environment that I know really wasn't holy or pleasing to God. You know, but he still loved me. He was still there enough to let me know, like, I'm here. When you're ready, I'm here. And it wasn't until I was stripped of everything that I finally looked up and I was like, God, you're here. What is it that you want? You know, and that's when that journey started.
So you had a turning point right then, didn't you?
Then.
Right then and there. And so that was a big challenge in your life, to turn your back on everything you had been trying to do since you were 13. Everything you had, but things were falling apart too, right?
Yes.
Right. And so did you go into Christian music? What did you do there?
Not at all. I prayed every single day for God to take away my voice. I said, this is an idol. I took this voice and I thought I wanted to help people, but instead I got so caught up in the pop music industry that I became a product, and I forgot about the people. I gave them what they wanted to hear, and I forgot about what they needed to hear, and I felt ashamed, and I said, God, take it away. And I thought, and then, you know, there were people in my life at the time too that were like, you need to sing for the Lord, you know, and I'm just like, I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know what worship music was. I'd never even heard of it. You know, there were hymns and stuff that I did in the church that I attended growing up, but, you know, I didn't really know that was even music, you know. I thought it was something else. So that was very far from me. So I didn't even go down that road. I prayed for God to take it away. So how did you
end up going where you are now?
I had a good 3 years of just spending time with God and trying to see what it was that he wanted for my life.
But, and what is it? What are you doing now?
Well, now it's definitely using this voice, whether it's singing or speaking, to share the story that, you know, here I was, this girl in pursuit of the light, the spotlight, and I never knew that what I really needed to be pursuing was the true and living light, you know, the light of the world, the only one that could really give me the hope.
Nothing like it.
Yeah, the only thing that could really give me the hope that I was looking for since I was a child. You know, I feel like all the times that I wanted to die, or all the times that I was out there trying to fulfill something, it was because I had a void and I was filling it with the world, and I did.
And it doesn't
fit. It didn't work.
Well, let me ask you something. There are people watching you, and they're really listening to you because they're wanting to head that way. Maybe they have dreams, goals, talent. What advice now that you've been through everything you've been through, what advice would you give people? What kind of wisdom?
Yeah, honestly, you know, we can pursue everything we want. You know, I've been there and I've done that. And without really having Christ in our lives, in our hearts, guiding us and giving us the wisdom on how to use these gifts that He Himself has given us, we'll sabotage it. We will hit a dead end. And I did. I hit a dead end. And He redirected my life. And that's when I finally surrendered it to Him. I think what happens is we have talents or we have goals and we hold on to them so tightly because we have to make it. And in this country, we're taught, you know, we have to make it. We have to be the ones to go out there and get it. And yes, faith without works is dead. But we have to have the faith in God that His plan with our gifts is the true and perfect plan, and then we work towards that. So my advice and the wisdom that I've learned from just my life is give Him your plans, give Him your dreams, and let Him lead you the way in which He wants you to go. The things that I do now, the doors that I walk through now, and the stages that I sing on now, I could have never imagined doing that. And yes, I was in front of thousands and I was doing all these things, but I was leading people to hell with me, like, if we're being honest. You know, now when I stand on a stage and I use the same gift, but I use it for God, there's purpose in that. And in that, His Spirit just has its way. And I see people's lives and their hearts, get touched. And they even start their own journey with God and finding true purpose and true hope. And really being able to attain dreams that's in them that they never even knew. So, my advice is give it to God and just watch what He's going to do, because it's so much bigger than our own little, plans and our own
Well, let me tell you a
things.
statement I live by. If you do it for yourself, you'll have some success. But if you allow Him to do it, He will place you in realms you never dreamed of. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you've been on this show tonight. I know that people have been fascinated with your story. And I thank all of you so much for watching this. It wasn't an accident that you turned on the TV tonight. I hope that you received some wisdom you needed and that you have a great rest of the night. I'll see you next time. Bye.